Pour yourself a pumpkin spice latte and pull those apple cider donuts out of the oven because today we're talking about the best books to read in fall. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's still summer, Tony. No, it's not. It's September 1st. Everyone automatically clicks into fall mode. August, the end of August is the death of summer for most people. So
it's funny you say that. I was getting a coffee yesterday, and it's a coffee shop that I like to go to like once a week. They do, seasonal stuff.
Yeah.
And some of their summer ones are really good. I was like, I'll get one of those. And they changed it to their fall one. And I was looking at the menu and I was like, it's August. And then I was like, oh, tomorrow is September. Like,
yeah. But I think summer doesn't officially end till
no, we've got another few weeks, but.
So welcome back to the Laughing Books podcast. I'm your host, Tony. With me as always is Andy, AKA Metafictional Meathead. Andy struggled with this one. I would say in general, we're probably not the type of people who pick seasonal reads.
No, this was like so we're talking about books that remind us of fall or that you should read during the fall. And I don't think prior to this have ever thought about books seasonally. So
I do a little bit. It's definitely more of like the I'm your girly on Book Talk type of thing.
Yeah.
Which Book Talk is going through some drama right now.
Yes.
Between the thing that you had shared with the woman complaining that a book had too many words on each page. And I also saw, what's really interesting to me is there's lots of people that will argue and fight and kind of call each other out. And they all have like 750 followers, 1,500 followers. And I'm like, guys, like, no offense, but does anybody really care? You know what I mean? Like if somebody with a tiny account that basically very few people saw it posts something that you really disagree with, like you're just, no one saw it. So move on with your
also,
day.
Even with the amount of followers, like who cares?
Also that
we've talked about before, the number of books that are out there. Like if someone posts something that you disagree with, or like, who cares? Just don't read the books they're talking about.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing is
I've been making fun of some smut readers recently, so maybe I shouldn't talk about that.
Well, I mean, it's the type of thing where I get it. Like I will jump on a lot of different opportunities to make some content if I think there's like something to it, or if I really am passionate about what's being discussed. And one thing I do like about TikTok more than Instagram is TikTok can kind of exist as a conversation across videos because of the ability to like stitch and reply.
Right.
And Instagram has those functionalities, but nobody uses them. It was not adopted by the user base. So that's kind of cool. But I mean, yeah, I'm kind of with you. It's like, if you're mad that somebody made a video saying that, well, the one that really made me think of this was a woman had said, she was responding to a video where someone had said, you shouldn't make negative review videos and you should just focus on the books that you do like and whatever. And you and I have talked about this too, where we are a little bit hesitant to badmouth a book because it's just, we're not the right readers for it potentially.
Right.
So I didn't see the original video, but this woman was making a piece of content responding to that, saying that it's toxic positivity and just bad-mouthing her for having that take. And I'm like, is that really an important issue to you that somebody said like your book review should be mostly positive? Like even if you fundamentally don't agree with that, like did that really need a response from you?
Yeah.
And this response video actually did kind of blow up. So when I last looked, it had like 50 or 60,000 views, I think, and a ton of comments. And then she was making fun of this poor girl for blocking her. She's like, I commented and she so pathetic, she blocked me. And it's like, well, that's what the block function is for. It's if you're like, I don't like this person.
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with you. Why does that make you weak? Or you're going onto their piece of content, hating on what they said, and they blocked you. So what? That's why it exists. So I digress. Reading update, recap. Where you at, buddy? Everyone's favorite part of the show, the reading recap.
Okay, so I finished The Taker and Other Stories by Rubem Fonseca. I want to quickly correct something. Someone pointed this out when I talked about his book in the reading recap last week.
Yeah.
I misspoke. I said he was a Portuguese writer. He's Brazilian. I was thinking about the language it was translated from.
Portuguese,
so,
sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he's a Brazilian writer.
Yep.
Wrote in Portuguese, translated from Portuguese. And I'm going to look this up real quick because our good friend Seth pointed this out to me or requested when we talk about books in translation, if we also could give a shout out to the translator.
Oh, sure.
So that particular collection of short stories was translated by Clifford E. Landers. So, but yeah, really interesting, really kind of fun, quirky short stories. Most of them were pretty dark. My kind of weird.
Good for the fall season.
Yeah, sure. Not really like creepy and horror dark, but just disturbing.
Yeah.
Psychologically dark. So that was from Open Letter. That was a good one. Other than that, I've mostly been reading The Dying Grass by Vollmann. Trying to, I wouldn't say like pound through it and finish it, but really making an effort to gain some ground on that. I think sometimes with big books, we've talked about it before, like with big books, it's nice to grab some other short ones or shorter books, kind of read those in between.
Yeah.
And I think, especially lately, I've gotten a little too sidetracked on the kind of break books.
Yep.
So just trying to get caught up on Dying Grass, and I have some other books that I'm looking forward to reading. So I wouldn't say I'm trying to put it to bed because I'm really enjoying it, and I do want to savor it and not just like rush through it. But I would like to finish it soon so that I can start some other reads and not be trying to juggle too much at once.
Yeah.
And I had been reading Texas, The Great Theft by Carmen Boullosa, translated by Samantha Schnee. That's from Deep Vellum. I'm a little on the fence. I was telling you yesterday, I think I might pull the plug on that.
Yeah.
It's not a bad book. I was enjoying it at the start. I think it's more of just wrong time, or bad timing for me. I was talking to someone on Instagram that I had originally heard about the book through, and he was saying it is kind of more of a kaleidoscope novel without any sort of singular plot, which I was kind of expecting that it was going to, be more about kind of some more significant events going on at the border.
Yep.
And it's so far, it's just kind of about, some of the smaller goings on and kind of lives of all these characters in these two towns on opposite sides of the Rio Grande. That, it's certainly an interesting and playful novel. Just not sure if it's the one for me right now.
Yeah.
The way it starts off is actually, I thought, was really cool and unique. So it starts off with this, I believe it's in the town on the American side of the border. Yeah, the American side of the border. This sheriff insulting a kind of prominent Mexican figure who kind of polarizing. Some people really like him. Some people kind of see him as like a kind of a bandit, a cattle rustler, criminal type. But he's well respected by enough people that being insulted in this, they're in like the town square, kind of causes this ripple effect. So the first like 30, 40-ish pages is basically just like news of this insult spreading. So like, it starts off with the sheriff insulting the guy, and then so-and-so heard it, told it to so-and-so, and passed, kind of this like game of telephone of this, the rumor and news of this insult passing from character to character and home to home and things like that, which I thought was a really unique and kind of interesting way of introducing all these characters and kind of setting the scene.
Yeah, it sounds cool.
And then it just kind of continues on and starts adding all these characters and all this. And like I said, it still seems like an interesting novel to me. Just it might not be the right time for me. So
yeah,
probably going to put that one to bed and maybe revisit it in the future. But
cool.
That's all I've been reading. I did recently start the show Bad Monkey on Apple TV.
Vince Vaughn,
Vince Vaughn.
How was that?
It's
based on a book, isn't it?
I don't know.
I think it is.
Interesting.
I think I saw a book in a store last week.
I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, check on that.
But I'm really enjoying it. It is certainly my kind of weird. I think there's only 4 episodes out right now. But I think anyone that's a fan of like Inherent Vice would dig it. It kind of has this, it's not just like a simple murder mystery case. It's odd and quirky and has some darkness to it. So
cool.
Yeah, it is based on a 2013 novel of the same name by Carl Hiaasen. Hiaasen.
Yeah, it's just more evidence that literally all new television and movies are based on books, which is interesting. And
I'll have to look up the novel now.
Yeah, somebody had said when we had discussed this before on the podcast, in a comment, they had mentioned that it's because like books have like a proven track record, and so Hollywood or whoever is just trying to kind of play it safe by going with something that's known. And I'm like, but then you have something like that that's like, I've never heard of that book.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's not popular, but I know about a lot of books,
right.
Like between the two of us, neither of us had ever heard of it.
Yeah.
So I'm a fan of Hot Ones, the YouTube series. Mm-hmm. And I watched the one with Vince Vaughn where he talked about that, obviously. And I looked up the trailer for the show. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then literally just last week when I was on the Cape, saw it in the store, and I was like, oh, I think that's about the inspiration for the show. So, yeah, that's kind of interesting. So this week I'm still just chugging away at my big reads right now, the 40 Days of Musa Dagh and Che, Revolutionary Life. And I'm like 10 or 15 pages away from finishing Natural Causes by Nina Lykke, who's a Norwegian author. Sorry, Seth, don't know the translator off the top of my head. That's an open letter publishing book. I just started it yesterday and I'm almost done, or started it Friday, I think. And it's one of the books I got in my purchase from the Women in Translation sale.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I might have gotten that too.
If you got it, you got to read it like ASAP. It's very good. It's very, very good. So
I did not get that one. I almost got it, but
it's very good. So most books you pick up expecting to like, because otherwise you wouldn't read them. But immediately I was just like, oh yeah, I'm in. This is
sweet,
fantastic. So
that's the best.
Yeah, it's about a woman who's a general practitioner, mm-hmm. doctor, and she's been in the game for a long time. She's very jaded, burnt out. She's been married for a long time, kind of the same situation there, just like a little bit burnt out, going through the motions of her marriage. And she starts to kind of like lose it a little bit. And so she like has conversations with the skeleton in her office. And so it's like a patient will come in and her and the skeleton, it's all in her mind,
Right.
but her and the skeleton will like talk shit about the patient or whatever.
Amazing.
And the skeleton like talks shit about her and like how she's like ruining her own life and all this stuff. It's very good. It's very modern in not a contrived way, but I always thought it was a little goofy when things like the internet and cell phones and social media started to become a thing, and then those started to be incorporated in media and art. So like you'd hear somebody make a reference to like Facebook in a rap song, and it just felt a little clunky. And I feel that way about writing too. But she's been able to really weave that stuff in a very natural feeling way and still like kind of have a lot of like literary qualities to it, I think. She's also really on the money with the doctor-patient relationships and some of those idiosyncrasies and some of the awkward situations that happen there. And as someone that's, I have a crazy medical history with my heart, I've like met so many doctors at this point and been in a position where I've had to advocate for myself, been in a position where doctors are treating me like it's all in my head and it's not. Been in situations where probably something was in my head. You know what I mean? So I've been on kind of like all sides of this, and I just thought she nailed it. And then on the relationship side, like anyone that's been in a really long relationship, like 5, 10, 15 years, I think can relate to a lot of what's happening in the story. So it's just a really beautifully written, like just so, I guess, like poignant for lack of a better term, which is such a cliche way to describe a book, but it's really apt in this situation. So
interesting.
Really big breath of fresh air after finishing Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead, which I didn't really care for. And I feel like there are some similarities between those two authors. One's Norwegian, one's Polish. They're about the same age. They both are stories about middle-aged women kind of dealing with a changing world and dealing with these new technologies and cell phones and social media and all that stuff. I just feel like Natural Cause is just doing a much better job of weaving all that together. So that's pretty much it for me.
Interesting. I'm glad you brought up the kind of modern stuff that can be an issue in novels, because I think that was something that I remember almost buying that book in the open letter sale. And I think what kind of was the deciding factor, or what made me kind of pick something else, was I think there was something in the blurb about how she uses Facebook.
Yes, there is.
And I'm the same way as you. Like if sometimes I feel like that's clunky or a little too ham-fisted.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine like Dostoevsky writing about Instagram?
Yeah.
When you think of it in that way, I think it removes like the timeless factor. Like, can this work become timeless? And at this point, yeah, maybe social media is here to stay, but it's such a finite thing so far.
Yeah.
It's so new still.
Yeah, I think it really, really dates the novel. Mm-hmm. And
it's also sad to think about, like, is this going to become like an integral part of the human experience,
That too. But yeah, like I said, I think sometimes it just is a little too ham-fisted where authors try to like work it in.
Yeah.
But it's good to know that that's not the case.
I'm loving it. And so much about a book is, we've talked about this at length, is when you read it in life.
Right.
And so I think, I don't necessarily see myself in any of the characters, but I can understand a lot of the perspectives because of what I've been through with all the heart stuff. And, I'm 39 now.
You just had a birthday.
Thanks to everyone for the birthday wishes. If you were one of the people that guessed, I am 39.
You are almost a middle-aged woman in a changing world. So,
well, I mean, the average lifespan is 77, I think, for men in America. So I'm middle-aged for sure.
You're right there, yeah.
Yeah, just a quick side note. I got maybe 300 responses to the Guess How Old I Am post, and I think only 2 people got it right.
Wow.
the very first guess was 39, and then there wasn't another guess of 39 until like the 100th or 200th guess. Most people, very flatteringly, were somewhere between 29 and 35, and I was like, okay, I'm doing okay. But a couple like
Good for you.
50 plus, and I was like, dude, really? Like, I don't even have gray hair. You know?
You got some in the beard there.
A little bit, but it's not like I've gone gray.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so
I had someone the other day ask me if I was like 30 or 31, and I was like, man, you know, I'm not one of those people that like dreads turning 30.
You're 29, right?
28.
Oh, you're 28.
But I was like, I got a couple years. Just give it to me. Come on.
Your birthday's in February?
January.
Oh, I was close on both. I mean, come on. So anyway, let's talk about the 5 books we've each picked out to get in the fall mood, to get us ready to pick apples and go on horseback rides or whatever else people do. What do people do in the fall? I don't know.
I don't know.
Read books.
I don't think any of the books
Kick it off here, Andy.
I've got here will inspire anyone to go out and pick apples, but
Let's make a case.
okay. Yeah, so like we were saying at the start, I kind of struggled with this one just because I've never really thought about books seasonally.
Yeah.
And I don't think there are many books that I've read that really deal with the seasons, you know, as like a setting or a theme, or you know, or really a prominent part of the book, I should say.
Yeah.
So I just kind of picked some books that I thought would be good to read in the fall.
Sure.
Maybe fit the vibe. I don't think any of them would really deal with the positive parts of fall, but
That's okay. Well, we'll take any excuse to talk about books.
yeah, I think they're all good ones. So hopefully inspire some reading. First one I've got is from Corona Samizdat. It's one of their pocket books, Wailing, Madness, Shame, and Death by Gavin. This one takes place in Australia. It's very dark.
Do they even have fall in Australia, Andy?
I don't know.
Seth, chime in.
Yeah, sound off, buddy. But yeah, so it's about a young man kind of at that, I think he just graduates like high school or maybe college, but you know, kind of that late teens, early 20s, like what am I going to do with my life now? You know, he's got a single mother, and her father comes in, and who's not like a new appearance in this young man's life. He's been around. He's like, you're a man now. I'm going to tell you some things about, you know, your mother's life, who your father was, things like that. And just kind of sets this whole train in motion of this young man kind of figuring out where he's going, what he's doing.
Is W. Gavin an Australian writer?
I believe so. I think he is. It's kind of an odd setting if you're not Australian. I would feel like, you know.
Yeah, it would make sense, right?
But yeah, it's very dark and tragic, kind of a Oedipus-like text.
Yeah.
It's actually where the title comes from.
Oh, gotcha.
It is a quote from Oedipus, the king. But now wailing, madness, shame, and death, every evil men have given a name. Everything criminal and vile that mankind suffers, they suffer. No, not one evil is missing. Is the quote from Oedipus. So, yeah, it's been a bit since I've read it, so I don't have a ton more to say on it than that, but it's a great novel.
That is one of the ones I picked up on my recent Corona Samizdat order, my first Corona Samizdat order. So my first pick is one that most people will be familiar with, and that is All Quiet on the Western Front, the classic by Erich Maria Remarque. the story of World War One. Why most people, why I picked this for fall is because that's kind of when the novel takes place. I mean, it takes place over a few different seasons, but quite a bit of it's like late summer, early fall, and World War One ended in November, which is the end of the war is kind of featured in this book. You've read this quite a long time ago, correct?
No.
Oh, you haven't read this?
I have not.
Oh, it's fantastic. Actually, one of my favorite novels of all time. Probably a top 20, I would say, at this point. Incredibly well written. They made a Netflix movie out of it last year, which was decent. But, it wasn't in English, so it doesn't really count.
I was going to say, that was in French, wasn't it?
German.
German.
It was in German.
I'm not French, whatever language.
Yeah, because the book is written by a German and
yes,
about the German military. Yes. For those that don't know, Erich Maria Remarque, Maria was his mother's name, so he took it as his middle name after she passed away, I believe. And just an all-time great, in my opinion. Like, it stood the test of time, and for good reason. It's incredibly well written, very engaging, very sad. Kind of humanizes the German soldiers quite a bit, which I know that in World War One, the good guys versus the bad guys wasn't as clear as it was in World War II. However, we did fight against Germany in America. So I think from the American perspective, we kind of think of Germany as the bad guys, and World War One as well. So I really appreciated the novel for that. And this is a book that's often assigned in high school, which there's some great books that are part of the common high school curriculum, but a lot of times you're like, am I going to enjoy that as an adult? But this is one that I was like, oh, this book is fantastic for anybody.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty easy read, I would say. So
right on.
Yeah. It just has an overall, kind of that fallish vibe for me, I guess.
Nice. Up next, I've got another small one. This is from Archipelago Books. It is Eastbound by Maylis de Kerangal.
That is the name.
Yeah. She is French. It is translated from the French by Jessica Moore.
Andy, accommodating these requests right off the bat. People are like, Tony, can you put timestamps on there? I'm like,
This is kind of an easy one for me to do. It's right in front of me.
That is true. I don't know who translated this, to be honest with you.
There's probably multiple different translations of that too.
This copy that I have was translated by A.W. Ween.
A.W. But it all takes place on a Trans-Siberian train.
Oh, cool.
It is about a young soldier in the Soviet army basically trying to defect, and this older French woman on the train helping him.
That sounds so up my alley.
Avoiding, the other Soviet officers on the train at the train stations, kind of helping him.
Which war?
I'm trying to think when it takes place. There's not really much like talk of active combat.
Just like it's someone enlisted.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And they're kind of traveling around, Russia. But yeah, really, thrilling novel. Kind of grips you the whole time. Keeps you on the edge of your seat. I believe the woman is like recently out of a relationship, or kind of at the tail end of her significant relationship. But a short one, it reads pretty easily, quickly. You can read it in a day. Good one for some of those fall days that might be a little too crisp and chilly to, get outside and go apple picking.
We're finding ways to make this work.
Good one to sit by the window and watch the leaves change, and maybe
I might have you leave that here because that sounds awesome, to be honest.
Yeah, here you go.
Cool. So my next pick is a book that we've both read, both enjoyed.
Yeah, go on.
And that is The Trees Grew Because I Bled There by Erich LaRocca. 2 Erics on my list today, apparently. I didn't even realize it till right now. So this is a collection of short stories, short horror stories. And this was very interesting to me because this checks 2 boxes of things I don't typically read. One is short stories and the other is horror. And I think we both enjoyed this. I think the writing is very sound and just well put together, well thought out. Erich does not lean on like boo gotcha scary or paranormal scary. He leans on psychological scary.
Yes.
Situations that we could all potentially see ourselves ending up in. Some of the scenarios are a little bit of a stretch, but I mean, it's horror, so you're kind of expecting that.
Right.
But I think some of them were really like anxiety inducing because you're like, this could actually happen.
Yeah, I felt a lot of anxiety reading that.
Yeah. And anytime you can have that kind of visceral experience reading a book, that's I think a great sign. I'm not super well versed in horror, so maybe that's like something a lot of horror authors do, but I just felt like it was well done. And as you and I both have discussed about this book previously, is that it was great for, you can like sit down, read one story, get gut punched by it, and then like put it down and go about your day. So obviously horror is going to fit really well with a fall vibe because it's spooky season, as they say.
Yeah.
But this is a good one for that. And he's been pretty much on a roll lately, like just really becoming a prolific author. He sent me his newest book that's coming out, I don't think till November.
I saw a copy of another book of his at Gibson's.
He's got like 3 or 4 now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So his newest book comes out, I want to say November. He sent me a copy. I've been holding off to read it because I wanted to do it in September or October.
Closer to release date, yeah.
Closer release date and just more in season with that kind of thing. But really excited to read more of his work. So, all right, what do you got next?
For my next book, on the note of spooky books for the fall, some of our listeners might be tempted to read House of Leaves this time of year. Don't waste your time. Read something else.
Andy has got a few books that you are staunchly against, and that is one of them.
Yes.
I think it's like Ducks, Newburyport, House of Leaves. I feel like there's one more that you've been pretty outspoken about disliking.
I mean, I'm not like staunchly against Stoner, as in people shouldn't read it.
Yeah.
But I am pretty outspoken, and I think my feelings about it are pretty opposite of what the going theme on the online book community is.
Yeah, so I actually picked up a second copy of Stoner on my trip to Cape Cod last week. I hit up several bookstores and didn't come away with too much, but they had a $4 copy of Stoner, and I was like, whatever, I'll use this for a giveaway.
Yeah.
Knowing that it's what I call like a trigger book, where there's certain books for those that are interested in getting more views on their content. This goes for any genre, but in literature, there's, a handful of books that if you mention will probably perform very well. So Stoner is one of them. Count of Monte Cristo is one of them. Crime and Punishment. Maybe Catch-22 to a degree, less than the others, but it was interesting when I made the post about buying Stoner, my original copy. Their Eyes Were Watching God, and the posthumous memoirs of Bras Cubas. A lot of people obviously say, oh, you got to read Stoner, it's amazing. But there were a handful of people saying, I did not care for it. I think it's a little overrated.
That was just me commenting 10 times.
Andy set up a couple PsyOps accounts to sway the public opinion. Yeah, I mean,
I don't think it's a bad book. I just think it's very overrated.
Yeah, I mean, I think people take the word overrated to mean something is bad, but that's not true. Like, if you were to say the Rolling Stones were the best band in the world, I'd say, well, that's a little overrated of a take, but that doesn't mean that they suck. It just means that they're just not as good as you're making them out to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm interested to read it. I have zero interest in reading House of Leaves. that ergodic style of kind of playing with the physical medium, I think is cool, but maybe that's overdoing it.
I'm in the same boat. Like, I think playing with the style and the structure and the medium is very cool and can make for a great work of art. I think with that particular book, I don't think you can easily call it a novel, but that particular book, the structure is more interesting than the writing.
Yeah. That's always my concern.
So it's, kind of like two narratives housed together. This guy finds this like trunk full of all these papers and stuff like that about this, for lack of a better word, I'll call it a haunted house. And is like, reading about it, reading about the family that moved in and all that. And so there's sections that are about the family that moved into the house, and there's sections that are about the guy reading about this family and how reading about it is affecting his life. And I think I felt like at a certain point there became too much focus on the guy that was reading about the family, and I didn't think those sections were written as well. I didn't think they were as interesting.
Yeah. You always wonder, are you using this quote unquote creative approach to the physical print as a cover up of the lack of quality of the writing itself?
And I wouldn't say it's like poorly written, because there are sections that are, really, really good, or are well written at least, that I thought were, interesting. Like I said, if there was more about the family moving into the house and their kind of experience there, I would probably have a different take on the book.
Yeah.
Some of those sections were similar to what you were saying about Erich LaRocca's collection. They were just, anxiety inducing, really gripping and visceral. And I just didn't feel the same way about the other narrative, and that kind of took over the novel.
Gotcha.
Which I think, I think the intent there was to kind of create in the reader of House of Leaves the same kind of experience that this character reading about the house is feeling.
Yeah.
And I think could have just done that with more sections about the family in the house. But anyway, my next pick is The Melancholy of Resistance by Laszlo Krasznahorkia, translated by George Surtees.
So when you messaged me and said, I'm kind of struggling to pick some books for this topic, that I have not read this, but that actually came to mind.
Yeah.
Because it just looks like a book.
Yeah.
Just the cover looks like something you would read in the fall time.
Yeah. I was thinking about Krasznahorkia was one of the first authors that came to mind. Mm-hmm. Some of his books, I think, if we're gonna get lean real heavily into the idea of seasonal reading, I think some of his might be better for like the winter. Sure. It's just full on dark, and
it's funny you mentioned that, because
depressing, and seasonal depression is in full swing.
I think there's a lot more to choose from for winter.
Yeah.
If you were to do, books about the winter season, just generally speaking. So,
yeah. But I think this is a good one to kind of prepare yourself for the seasonal depression of winter, which I think some of us start to do in the fall time.
Absolutely. It's a transitional season.
And, in this novel, the characters are kind of starting to come to grips with the more depressing characteristics of their lives and the town they live in, and what's going on there. But essentially it's this small town in Hungary, and this circus comes to town, the giant whale. and a very enigmatic kind of ringleader, and just kind of causes this quasi panic in the town, and things kind of start to unravel, and the characters start to, like I said, really start to recognize what's going on around them, and some of the more disturbing and depressing elements of their lives. So
Cool.
good one for the fall.
Yeah. I've heard fantastic things about his writing. That one's a fairly short book relative to some of his other works. I know.
I mean, Baron Venkheim is his longest.
Gotcha.
I think this is it's a little over 300 pages, a little bit longer than Satan Tango, longer than War and War. And then he's got some other short books out. So
Nice. My next one is The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. This is another horror book, and he is an indigenous author. So this is my first book that I read by him, and definitely will read more from him. It's about these three indigenous Americans, and they live on a reservation, and they go elk hunting, and then the result of their elk hunt leads to years of kind of chaos in their lives, I guess. This does kind of venture into that realm of the paranormal, but there's a lot of incorporation, a blend of kind of indigenous folklore with maybe some more traditional horror type of themes, which is really cool. Another book that kind of gives you anxiety, keeps you on edge, very unique and unlike anything else I've read. I mean, again, I'm not super well versed in horror, but I feel like this is a book that if you aren't a horror reader, you would still appreciate, because it's not over the top horror, and there's just really strong writing and a really interesting narrative aside from the horror aspect of it. So, I have another one from him. I think it's My Heart is a Chainsaw, which I believe is the second book that I'll probably read this fall.
nice.
Yeah.
All right. My fourth pick, big boy. We've got JR by William Gaddis. Excuse me. This one, I believe, is actually set during the fall, or parts of it are set in the fall. I've talked about it before. It is mostly dialogue, but there is some just kind of standard exposition or passages that are just kind of talking about the setting, and there's definitely more of a fall vibe, I guess, to those. But I mean, it's a great novel. Fall is that time of year where you start to spend less and less time outside, and what better thing to do when you're inside than grab a great work of fiction and just get lost in it.
Yeah, I was somewhat intrigued by JR when you talked about it on a previous episode. And then I forget how it came up in conversation on Instagram, but someone had mentioned that the audiobook, the narrator does different voices for the different characters. And I was like, okay, that sounds interesting. Like maybe I'll do it on audiobook, which I don't do a lot of audiobooks, and I had some leftover credits from Audible. And I pulled it up and I was like, I don't know. I just didn't care for the narrator. I'm super picky about that. But in the sample I listened to, it immediately got me interested in the actual story.
Yeah.
And so I went out and bought a physical copy of it.
Yeah, I listened to part of the audiobook. I just am the same way. Like, it's not my preferred medium. And
Yeah.
if I go more than a day or two without reading a book, like, I can get back into it relatively quickly.
It's hard to do that with an audiobook.
And I just cannot do it at all.
Yeah.
But, being almost entirely unattributed dialogue, like, it's pretty hard to find your footing in this novel. And I think I saw it on Reddit, like someone recommended the audiobook for to kind of counter that. And I understand what you're saying about being picky about narrators and not really jiving with it, but I really enjoyed the way he does different voices for everything. And I think I listened to part of it, and I didn't go all the way back to the start, but I think I went back a little bit, kind of being like, okay, now I have an idea of who's speaking when.
Yeah.
As you read, you do really start to pick up on each character's unique voice and have a better and can get pretty comfortable like figuring out like who's speaking just based off of the way it's written.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that sense of understanding, I think the audiobook is a good place to kind of listen to at the beginning and kind of get your bearings.
Yeah. It's quite a few people have told me over the last couple of years that they listen to an audiobook while they read the physical copy, which is something I've only tried to do once and I wasn't too sure about it. So maybe with a work like that, it would make even more sense.
Yeah.
I'm contemplating doing that with the tunnel because Gas does narrate the audiobook of it. So I think that's cool when an author narrates their own work. And I do think his voice, I like the way his voice sounds and the way he speaks. So when my new copy of the tunnel arrives on Tuesday, that might be something I'll think about doing, especially because, as you've mentioned, the first 100 pages of that book are very challenging.
Yes. I mean, the whole book is very challenging.
Yeah. But maybe that might be a good way to kind of like kick it off.
Yeah.
Because I do find that having somebody that fully understands the text give you the cadence and inflection on certain parts, like you said, can kind of give you a little more contextual clues as to what's going on, particularly dialogue-wise. So,
but yeah, well, like I said, JR is a great novel. It's my favorite from Gaddis. I think you could read that or The Recognitions in the fall or any time of the year, really, and enjoy them. But great book to get lost in, and we're approaching the time of year where people spend more time inside reading. So
yeah,
pick up a copy.
Cool. My next pick is my only nonfiction on this list, and it is Yellow Bird by Sierra Crane Murdoch. I actually just recently read this. By far the best nonfiction I've read so far this year, which hasn't been a ton of nonfiction this year, but a good amount. And this takes place in North Dakota, and I think that kind of like Midwest, the plains area just in general gives me a little bit of a fall-ish vibe. For whatever reason, anything Native American related kind of gives me that vibe as well. And this book is also about kind of like transitions and changes and longing and melancholy, which I think are emotions and sentiments that I associate with autumn and fall. If you hadn't heard me talk about this book before, it's kind of a dual or triple narrative story. It's about a woman who's a drug addict or recovering drug addict and her trying to kind of rebuild her life while simultaneously she becomes obsessed with solving a missing persons case on a reservation. And the missing person is a white guy, not a member of the tribe. And also really heavily incorporates the politics of the region and the oil boom that happened there. Very tangential, but somewhat related to this. I saw a news article the other day that said like some record-setting diamond had just been discovered in Botswana. Mm-hmm. And it was discovered by a Canadian mining company. And I don't think most people would probably see that and not even think twice about it. But another nonfiction that I read this year, which was Vulture Capitalism by Grace Blakely, which is a great book if you're interested in kind of modern politics and economics. She talks about how a lot of these countries in Africa and South America and all over the world, really, that had formerly been colonized by empires like the British Empire or the American Empire or whatever, people think, oh, well, they all left those countries, but we still colonize them through like economic pressure.
Right.
And it just is so odd to me now that I've read that book, it's like that stuck out like a sore thumb to me. It's like this world record diamond find by a Canadian company in an African country.
Yeah.
It's such a shining example, pun intended, of that's kind of fucked up, you know? And that's kind of the theme of this book too, is this oil is found on the reservation, and you would think that that would enrich the reservation as a whole, but really it's just all these non-Native American owned companies, you know, came in to make the majority of the profits for the resources found there. So anyway, discussion for another day, but
you know what? I was going to say that could be our next video. We, we're talking about books for the fall of the season. Now we can do books for the fall of the Western empires.
Yeah. That's a great topic for sure.
It's just going to be me listing Gravity's Rainbow 5 times. All right. And my final book, Solenoid by Mircea Cartarescu, translated by Sean Cotter. Similar to JR, parts of it take place in the fall. One of the protagonists actually writes this long form poem called The Fall. He's a school teacher, so, you know, it's back to school season. And just kind of a lot of it is the protagonist ruminating about life, as I think most of us do during these transitory seasons. So similar to JR, just a good book to dive into if you're starting to spend more time inside and looking for activities.
Yeah, I picked up my copy about a month ago, and I'm not sure when I'll get to it, but I'm definitely excited to read it. I've heard nothing but good things about Solenoid. So
yeah, there are. I think you would enjoy a lot of it. There are parts that I think are a little bit, I guess, more abstract than you typically go for.
Yeah.
A little bit more. It's certainly a maximalist novel, and I think there are parts of it that maybe a little more verbose.
Yeah.
Than
you're
typically a fan of.
It just depends on how it's done.
Yeah.
And the mood that I'm in.
Yeah.
I mean, you definitely read more, I would say, boundary pushing works than I do. But take something like Omen Setter's Luck. That definitely checks that box.
Right.
And I freaking loved that book.
Yeah.
I actually can't wait to reread that book. So it just depends if it's done well.
I'm excited for you to read The Tunnel.
Yeah, I'm very excited to read The Tunnel as well.
I think you'll do that this year? Or?
Yeah, for sure. I've been obsessed with William Gass since I read Omen Setter's Luck. Like, just something about him. I mean, I really enjoyed Omen Setter's Luck, and then I was trying to find interviews with William Gass, and I found the one that I sent you, that you had already listened to a little bit of, and I just was like, I'm 100%.
He's one of those authors that, like, it's so easy to get obsessed with.
Yeah. And then, as I mentioned to you off air, I found a Reddit thread where somebody said that reading The Tunnel made them like suicidal. Like it made them so depressed. They were thinking about taking their own life, which obviously glad that they didn't and don't want people to do that. But something about a book having the ability to create that kind of impact on somebody, I was like, now I have to read this thing.
I forget. I think I saw it on Instagram, and I forget if it was something that the poster kind of came up with on their own, or if it was something like a quote or a thought that they were sharing from someone else, attributing it to the original thinker, talking about The Tunnel, that there are large parts of it that are, when you're reading it, it's the, reflection of the ugliest parts of ourselves.
Yeah.
And, I think, I don't remember if it was in that interview that we had watched or someone else, but where Gass is talking about how it's like the fascism of the heart.
Yeah. What a phrase.
Yeah. So I might try to make find the bandwidth to reread it along with you. But
You read it this year, right?
last year,
Oh, must have been. Was
about a year ago.
okay.
Yeah, it was towards the end of 2023.
Yeah, so I've just been obsessed with that. So I'll probably try to get to that this year, and I definitely want to like take my time with it.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a challenging book, but I don't know. Just from everything that people have said about it, listening to William Gass, just his general outlook on writing and philosophy, I think jives a lot with my personal philosophy. So I'm very intrigued by it. So my last pick for the best fall books, and these are in no particular order. I just stacked them in terms of the actual physical size of the copies in front of me.
Yeah.
Is Between Two Fires by Christopher Buehlman. This is actually one of my favorite covers of books in my collection. It's kind of sparse, but I just love the knight, the skeleton knight. It's cool.
Epic tale of medieval horror.
Yeah, so this, again, maybe it's a little cliche to pick like horror-themed books for this topic, but again, it is fitting. And I came across this book. I don't know if Christopher Buehlman's out there like just killing it with his like search engine optimization game or what, but I did a search one time for like best books of all time. And for whatever reason, Google posted this one up, which you can't read too much into because it was like listed under like the shopping section.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay, that's weird. Never heard of this. Read the synopsis. I was like, sounds cool. Cover's cool. Kind of just like made a mental check of it. Like maybe I'll get around to looking into this.
Yeah.
But I was like, Christopher Buehlman, I don't know anything about that guy, so whatever. And then I was doing a little bit of research for a video, making a list of books that were similar to The Last of Us, the TV show. And so I kind of like made a list of what makes that show great, like what it is about that I like. Of course, there's like post-apocalyptic, but there's kind of this narrative of like father-daughter type of relationship thing going on in that. Have you seen the show?
No.
Oh, it's fantastic. I thought it's based on the video game.
Right.
I thought the show was really well done. And so I was kind of like searching for books that have this like strong like father-daughter kind of like survival or like parent-child survival thing. You know, The Road, Cormac McCarthy was the first book that came to my mind. But then this book popped up again. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember this when for whatever reason Google spit this out as a best book of all time, which it's very good. I wouldn't put it in the best book of all time category. And I was like, okay, I got to read this now because I've seen it kind of pop up twice independently of two different type of searches. So I picked up a copy and it's great. It's about this kind of disgraced knight, and it takes place during the Black Plague in Europe. And he's basically just trying to survive the Black Plague, and he has this young girl and a priest in tow with him that he's kind of one of those dudes that it's like, I don't really want to help you because you're just going to slow me down type of things. But also he does have a conscience. And so that makes an interesting narrative. But there's a lot of like biblical themes woven in a horror kind of way. And you are never really sure if what's happening is actually happening, like if ghosts and demons are actually there, or if this guy's just like hallucinating because he's out of his mind. So it's just a fun, engaging read. Pretty easy read, a little bit adult themed. There's a lot of bad language, a lot of violence, some sex. So it's definitely an adult book, but it's like a blend of historical fiction, horror, and I would say maybe a little bit of fantasy element to it, but not much because that's not usually my thing. So if you're just looking for like a kind of cool, fun read, and the reason I think it's good for fall is because it does kind of, again, like take place in like the lead up to like winter-ish type of vibe. And I just think it's kind of like fits that general spooky fall season vibe. So
Right on.
So any books that you are yourself looking forward to over the next couple months as we enter into fall?
I'm really looking forward to reading Against the Day by Pynchon.
That's the last one for you,
The
right?
last one.
You've read everything else by him.
Yep.
Until he releases his next book.
Yeah, right. That's really the only book that I like think I'm definitely going to read. You know, a lot of the books that I talked about when we did our Women in Translation episode a couple weeks ago, you know, I still want to read The Apple in the Dark by Lispector. I would like to read Melina by Ingeborg Bachmann.
Of course, we're starting the Life on Books September read today.
Yes.
Death in Spring.
Death in Spring. Really looking forward to that.
Maybe poor choice for autumn. Death in Spring.
You know, I've kind of been thinking about going back and forth on maybe reading one of John Williams' other books, Butcher's Crossing.
So I have a copy of Butcher's Crossing on order from World of Books. And I ordered a few books from World of Books, and I got the shipment, and it did not include Butcher's Crossing. And so I emailed them and said, what's the deal? And they were like, oh, sometimes our books get shipped in separate shipping packages. So you're still within the window. So let us know if it doesn't come by this date or whatever. That date came and went. I emailed them again and said, hey, I still don't have this book. And that was a week ago, and they haven't written me back yet. So World of Books, step it up. I want my copy of Butcher's Crossing.
And then there's one others that I've been thinking about a lot.
I've heard Butcher's Crossing is really good.
Yes.
And that was made into a movie with Nicolas Cage.
Yes.
2 years ago or last year.
I think last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard it's really good and really intense. I want to read The Last Samurai by Helen DeWitt. And then another one that's been kind of on my mind lately, Wild Horses by Jordi Cusa, which is translated by Tiago Miller. It is all about the heroin epidemic that swept through Catalonia in the 1980s.
Oh, wow.
It just sounds really interesting. So that's kind of it. Oh, also the new or forthcoming English translation of Laszlo Krasznahorkia's Hersht 07769. I believe the publication date got pushed out a couple weeks, but it's still due out in September. So
Nice.
this month.
Yeah.
So really looking forward to that.
Got a lot of reading ahead of you.
Yeah, no, I know. And then, you know, possibly The Tunnel if I can find the bandwidth for that.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see. Maybe, you know, anyone listening, if you want to do The Tunnel with us, maybe we'll do it for the book club. Although finding copies of it is challenging right now.
Yes. Yeah, it's
So.
a tough one to find copies of. If we want to push, if you are okay with pushing it out to October, I think that would be a good book club book.
Yeah. When does so Dahlke's reprinting it?
I believe so. I've seen it as part of their.
I mean, it's already listed on some vendors' websites.
I've seen it listed on vendors' websites. I have not seen it. It seems like it's been taken off of their website.
Not a good sign. We'll have to ask Chad.
But I know with some of the Essentials collections, especially with some of the longer novels, they run into, you know, printing, distribution,
Sure.
logistics issues.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think if that one is still planned, I don't think it's due out for a while. So,
Yeah, it's just too bad because it's like $20 or $30.
Yeah.
So much more affordable. Gosh, I'm totally blanking on the guy's name that you told me to reach out to. You said he's good at finding copies of The Tunnel.
He's good at finding a lot of books.
So-
he's on Instagram. I'm going to keep talking. I'll look him up.
Yeah, he had made a post. Somebody else had also told me to reach out to him. I don't remember. Sorry, I don't remember if it was Kevin, HV Book Nerd, or someone else. Maybe Kyle Poland. I don't recall. But somebody had said this guy's had and sold a few copies, so reach out to him. And
There's no place like Tome.
That's his handle?
Yes, his name is Jacob.
Yeah, so I had seen Jacob had a post about all the copies he had kind of turned over, and one of them he his most recent one, he said like he bought and then he found it was actually signed.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool. So I commented on that post. I said, you don't happen to have any of these laying around, do you? And he was like, no. And then I bought a copy for $60 on Thrift Books, and it's right there at the bottom of that stack. And I'm just not, it was the edition that I wanted the least. So there's the hardcover with the kind of Nazi armband.
Yep.
And that was by Alfred A. Knopf.
Correct.
And then there was the Dalkey, the original Dalkey, which is like the greenish cover. Mm-hmm. And then there was and that was a paperback. And then there was a Dalkey reprint. That's the one that you have, which is all black with the red text and then the tunnel graphic on it. And then there's that edition. I forget who published.
I think that's Knopf as well.
I don't think it is. You want to grab that. So this is the same design as the original hardcover, but it's a paperback. And so I kind of only wanted that cover if it was the hardcover. And I'm also not super thrilled about the condition that it's in. So like the edges of the pages are very yellowed. The edges of the cover are kind of frayed.
It's HarperCollins.
HarperCollins, thank you. So
yeah, I mean, I said this when you first got it, and just looking at it, like, it's not in bad shape, but for $60.
For $60, right? And so I think my top pick was the hardcover, the original hardcover, and my second choice was the Dalkey reprint, the one that you have, because I just think that's cool. My third choice was the original Dalkey, the green one, and this was kind of last for me. So I bought this, came in, I was like, eh. And then Jacob messaged me, and he's like, hey, man, this is on eBay now for $18.
Yeah.
And from World of Books, so hopefully I get this book. And it says it's in like new condition.
Nice.
And it's the version that you have, the Dalkey reprint. So I'm hoping that it's in great condition. I snagged that right away. I'll probably try to unload that for maybe, I don't know, $40 or $50 to try to recoup some of the money on eBay or something like that. But yeah, unfortunately, the book is super hard to get a hold of. Somebody messaged me and said like, oh, wow, I can't believe it's so expensive. Like I just bought a copy last year for like $20. So the deals are still out there, but there's probably a dozen or so copies on eBay, and the people that have them listed, they're all $100 to $200, somewhere in that range. And the ones that are open to accepting offers, you know, someone's got it listed for like $150, and it's like, okay, I'll give you $60. Nope. 85. Nope. 100. Nope. And that just sits there. Nobody buys it. I'm like, okay, whatever. So we'll have to see about that, just because I'm concerned doing that for the book club, just because it's going to be so hard for people to get a copy of it. So we'll see. I'll maybe do a little poking around and see when that Dalkey might be out. But somebody else was saying the same thing that you had said, which is like those Dalkey reissues. Like, what are you doing with the covers, guys? They are not good looking.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Dalkey. I like a lot of the types of books they put out.
And who's running it now? Is it Deep Vellum that manages it?
Yeah, they like revived it. So, Deep Vellum's kind of running it. I know Chad is involved.
Yeah.
And I certainly think it's great that they're getting some of these lesser known, mostly out of print novels back in circulation. I just think the covers are kind of boring and uninspired.
I agree.
I totally understand why, given that it's, a collection, they wanted to have it be kind of a uniform look.
But it's not a good uniform look, in my opinion.
They could have done something a little bit more unique to each novel, with it still kind of having the same look.
Well, in that interview that I mentioned with William Gass, he talks about the printing of the tunnel and how he wanted like an actual armband on the book, and he wanted certain sections, what did he say, like printed on
like a paper grocery bag.
Like a paper grocery bag, or you know, and so he understood the tactile experience of holding the book and wanted to play with that, like
Definitely.
House of Leaves, esque of kind of playing with the actual physical structure and printing. But yeah, I don't know. There is something about having a really aesthetically engaging book in your hands that adds to the experience. So
Definitely.
yeah. Well, cool. Anything else you want to talk about before we sign off?
I'm good.
I hope you all enjoy your Han Solo season. Are you familiar with this concept?
Of course I am.
All right. And until next time, see ya.